December 13th, 1996. A man stands at the heavily armed front gate of a maximum security Texas prison. He's not sneaking or sweating. He checks his watch, shoots an irritated glare at the guard tower, and taps his foot. Seconds later, the electronic lock clanks open. A flustered guard rushes over, apologizing as he swings the gate wide. The man nods curtly, walks past the razor wire, past the rifle scopes, and vanishes into the humid Texas night. No alarms, chase or tunnel, no bribe and no violence. 1 hour earlier, this man picked up a prison telephone and impersonated a district judge, literally ordering his own release. But here's the insane part. This is already his third escape, and he's about to pull off a fourth so audacious, it makes this one look like a warm-up. How did one man outsmart Texas prisons 4 times? And will the system be able to catch him? 1990. The chaos doesn't start in a prison cell. It starts with a confession. Stephen Russell is a 32-year-old married insurance salesman living a double life in Virginia. He's successful at work, respected in his community, suffocating behind a mask he can no longer wear. The day he finally admits to his wife that he's gay, his entire carefully constructed existence collapses around him. His marriage ends, his reputation crumbles, his comfortable suburban life vanishes, and something inside Stephen Russell snaps free. Stephen is dangerous, not because he's violent, but because he's brilliant in ways that make ordinary intelligence look sluggish. His tested IQ scores at 169, placing him in the top 0.01% of the population. He can read a room in seconds, memorize complex documents after a single glance, and mimic any voice he hears with unsettling accuracy. Before the ink on his divorce papers dries, he discovers his true calling, manipulation. He starts with small cons, a faked slip-and-fall accident in a grocery store aisle, a bogus insurance claim filed under false pretenses, quick money flowing in, minimal risk going out. By 1992, those petty schemes catch up with him. Stephen is arrested for insurance fraud and sentenced to 6 months in Harris County Jail, a slap on the wrist for a first-time offender. But to Stephen Russell, even 6 months behind bars is unbearable, because while he sits in a cramped cell counting the days, his first boyfriend is lying in a Houston hospital bed, dying of AIDS. Stephen is desperate to see him one last time before the end. That desperation will teach him something crucial about himself and about the fatal weaknesses hidden inside every system designed to contain him. 4 weeks into his sentence, Stephen spots discarded civilian clothes and a broken walkie-talkie tossed into a garbage bin during routine cleaning. To any ordinary prisoner, it's trash. To Stephen, it's an escape kit waiting to be assembled. He retrieves the street clothes when no one is looking, pulls them on under his prison uniform, and clips the dead radio to his belt. With a few adjustments, he transforms himself into an invisible maintenance worker, just another face in the parade of civilians flowing through the jail on daily business. Late on Friday, the 13th of December, 1993, Stephen walks briskly toward a locked security gate separating the detention area from the administrative wing. His heart pounds beneath his stolen shirt, but his face remains perfectly calm. He raises the dead walkie-talkie to his mouth and clicks the transmit button twice. Tap, tap. The guard on duty hears static crackle through his speaker, the universal signal of an officer trying to call in. Without thinking, without questioning, the guard buzzes open the gate. Stephen nods politely, steps through, descends 2 flights of concrete stairs, passes a pair of oblivious deputies chatting about their weekend plans, and strolls right out the front door of Harris County Jail into the cool December night air. No sirens wail behind him, no boots pound the pavement in pursuit. By the time anyone notices that inmate 942503 is missing from his cell, Stephen Russell is already in a borrowed car, racing toward a hospital bed where someone he loves is running out of time. He has just beaten one of Texas's largest jails with nothing more than thrift store clothes and a radio prop that didn't even work. He did it for love. But freedom lasts only a few precious weeks. Stephen is recaptured and made to serve out the remainder of his original fraud sentence, this time under closer watch. It's during this period, in early 1995, that fate throws him an unexpected lifeline. In the sterile fluorescent glow of the jail's law library, Stephen meets a shy, soft-spoken inmate named Philip Morris. Philip is 5 feet 2 inches with a quiet southern drawl and nervous eyes. Stephen is 6 feet 2 inches, magnetically charismatic, and 37 years old. One afternoon, Stephen reaches up to grab a book from a high shelf that Philip can't quite reach. One small kindness. Their eyes meet. Something electric passes between them. Stephen will later describe it as lust at first sight. Amid concrete walls and barbed wire, under the hum of fluorescent lights, 2 inmates fall helplessly, giddily, in love. When both men are released on parole in late 1995, they set up a home together in Houston. For a brief, shining moment, it looks like a happy ending. 2 men who found each other against impossible odds, building a quiet life together. But Stephen Russell has never been built for quiet living or honest work. Not when the man he loves deserves so much more than a modest apartment and paycheck-to-paycheck survival. Philip has never known real luxury, and Stephen is determined to change that. What will a con man sacrifice to hand the man he loves everything? And what happens when a con this ambitious starts to spiral beyond control? Back on the outside, Stephen picks up fraud like a native language he never forgot. With Philip waiting at home, Stephen forges an entire professional history from thin air. He creates a resume packed with impressive credentials, invents glowing references from prestigious companies that all redirect to his own cell phone, and strolls into job interviews armed with corporate jargon and unshakable confidence. He bluffs his way into a position as chief financial officer of a medical management firm, a role he has absolutely zero qualifications for, beyond an uncanny ability to fake competence. Somehow, impossibly, no one runs a background check. A newly freed felon is suddenly controlling the financial books of a multi-million-dollar company. Over the next 5 months, Stephen methodically siphons $800,000 from his employer's accounts into his own pockets. He funds a whirlwind romance that looks like something from a movie. The couple moves into a luxurious high-rise condo with a view of the Houston skyline. They buy matching Mercedes, gleaming jet skis, and Rolexes that catch the light just right. Stephen even gets cosmetic surgery on his eyes and teeth, perfecting his appearance to match the high-roller persona he's constructed. For Philip, who has never known this kind of abundance, it feels like a fairy tale come true. For Stephen, it's the ultimate game. Every stolen dollar is a gift of love laid at Philip's feet, and every day spent free is a day he intends to keep by any means necessary. But fairy tales have a way of crashing down hard. By early 1996, the medical management company discovers the gaping hole in its finances. Auditors trace the missing money directly back to their charming CFO. Stephen's elaborate ruse comes apart in a matter of days. He is arrested at gunpoint in the condo he bought with stolen funds and charged with massive embezzlement. Philip, innocent of the theft, watches helplessly as his lover is hauled off in handcuffs, facing decades behind bars. Their dream life evaporates overnight like smoke. And if there's one thing Stephen J. Russell absolutely cannot tolerate, it's being separated from the man he adores. Sitting in a drab jail cell awaiting trial, Stephen's mind begins churning through possibilities. He's done the impossible before. He can do it again. But this time, Texas authorities know exactly who they're dealing with. They've labeled him a confirmed escape artist and an extreme flight risk. The judge sets Stephen's bail at a staggering $900,000, practically guaranteeing he'll sit in jail until his trial date. $900,000 might as well be infinity for a penniless con man whose assets have been seized. For anyone else in the world, this would be the end of the road. Late one night, Stephen notices a custodian forgot to lock the door to the jail's administrative office. He slips inside, grabs a telephone, and dials the Harris County Courthouse. Clearing his throat, he deepens his voice and transforms into someone new. Judge Jerry L. Hurd, a name he spotted on court paperwork floating around the jail that morning. Adopting the measured, authoritative drawl of a Texas jurist, he speaks to the night clerk with absolute confidence. "This is Judge Hurd," he says. "I've just held a bond hearing for inmate Stephen Russell. The docket should reflect his bond is reduced to $45,000 effective immediately." On the other end of the line, the groggy court clerk doesn't think to question a judge's voice at this hour. Why would she? A judge's word is as good as a court order. She dutifully updates the file. Just like that, Stephen Russell's impossible $900,000 bail has mysteriously plummeted to $45,000. By morning, the guards are baffled to see Stephen smiling ear to ear in his cell. He already knows what's coming. A defense attorney arrives and informs a very confused Stephen, who plays along with wide-eyed innocence, that his bail has been inexplicably lowered. By afternoon, Philip has scraped together the 10% fee for a bondsman, and Stephen Russell waltzes out of custody into the bright Texas sunshine. One phone call, one fake voice, freedom delivered on demand. He doesn't waste a second. That very evening, Stephen and Philip skip town, driving east with the windows rolled down and the radio blasting. For a brief, delirious moment, they're just two lovers on a road trip, laughing at how easily they fooled the entire system. Stephen has humiliated the Texas courts twice now, and he wears that fact with visible pride. But the law isn't shrugging this off anymore. Not this time. As Stephen's taillights vanish into the night, a statewide manhunt kicks into gear. Texas authorities quietly tap the phones of Philip's relatives, alert the FBI and U.S. Marshals, and set up surveillance on anyone connected to the fugitives. They know exactly who Stephen will be with, and that gives them a crucial advantage. Within a week, investigators trace a cluster of phone calls from Philip to one of his family members. The calls ping from the Florida Panhandle. On April 5, 1996, in a motel parking lot in Pensacola, a swarm of federal agents converges on a payphone. Stephen steps out of the lobby to retrieve a fax and walks directly into a wall of badges and drawn weapons. Their week of freedom is over. Back in Texas, Stephen faces the full consequences. The judge, absolutely livid at being impersonated, orders Stephen held without bail. When the gavel finally falls, he's sentenced to 45 years in prison for the embezzlement and his telephone stunt. Philip, who had been out on bond for minor charges, receives a much lighter sentence and is sent elsewhere. The lovers are torn apart in shackles. As Stephen is led from the courtroom, he catches Philip's terrified eye and mouths a silent promise. "I will find you." The authorities think they've finally contained him. They've labeled him Houdini and shipped him to maximum security under constant watch. But how do you cage a man who treats every prison like a puzzle? And what happens when he discovers the one fatal flaw hidden inside their fortress? Winter 1997. Less than a year into his 45-year sentence, Stephen is already constructing his next escape. Texas prison officials know his face, his tricks, his reputation. They've upgraded his security classification and put him under extra scrutiny. They are determined not to be embarrassed again. But even the most imposing fortress walls contain cracks. Stephen finds his weakness in the most mundane of places, the prison's art supply closet. Over weeks of careful planning, Stephen secretly stockpiles green felt-tip markers from the facility's craft room. Each night in the privacy of his cell, he pops them open one by one, soaks the ink cartridges in water, and slowly dyes his standard white prison uniform, the exact shade of surgical scrubs worn by hospital staff. He's meticulous about the process, careful never to wring the fabric, which would create telltale streaks visible under fluorescent lights. The result is surprisingly convincing. Handmade surgical greens that would make him look just like any doctor walking the ward. Beneath the baggy costume, he tapes plastic garbage bags tightly around his torso and legs, hoping to confuse the scent for search dogs if the prison sends tracking teams after him. Every single detail covered. On Friday the 13th of December 1997, the moment arrives. Stephen dresses in his handmade scrubs, grabs a clipboard from a supply room, and strolls with practiced confidence toward the prison's main entrance. He times his approach perfectly. The officer stationed at the front desk is distracted by a personal phone call. With the practiced annoyance of a busy medical professional, Dr. Russell waves a fake ID badge in the general direction of the guard and heads straight for the door. Medical personnel come and go constantly in a massive facility like this, and the guards don't personally recognize every doctor. Without a single challenge, Stephen Russell pushes open the heavy front door and steps into bright Texas sunlight. His pulse soars as he crosses the prison yard at a carefully measured pace. A guard tower swivels in his direction, and for one frozen moment, Stephen feels every nerve in his body scream at him to run. But the tower guard sees only a physician taking a break, nothing unusual, and swivels back to scanning the perimeter. Stephen fights down the animal instinct to bolt and keeps walking. Only when he's safely beyond the outer perimeter fence does he allow himself to break into a dead sprint, crashing straight into the surrounding woods. After roughly 100 yards, he skids to a stop, heart hammering against his ribs. He can't resist the moment. Turning back toward the prison, Stephen raises his middle finger high in the air, a triumphant salute to the fools who thought they could hold him. He doesn't linger to celebrate. Stephen peels off the plastic-wrapped uniform, stuffs it under a rotting log, and makes his way to the first house he spots through the trees. A startled elderly woman answers his knock. Standing on her porch is a tall, thin man in an undershirt, slightly out of breath but speaking with perfect calm, claiming to be a doctor who just survived a terrible car accident on the highway nearby. His cell phone was destroyed in the crash. He just needs a ride to the nearest town. Within minutes, a kindly stranger is driving Dr. Russell away from the scene of his own prison break. By the time prison officials realize one of their inmates has vanished and that the doctor who walked out was actually him, Stephen is long gone. He's sitting in a Houston bar sipping a margarita, watching breathless news coverage of his own escape on the television and grinning like a Cheshire cat. For the third time, he has pulled off the impossible. And the first thing he does with his freedom is contact Philip Morris. That's right. Philip had finished serving his own short sentence months earlier and was waiting on the outside. The two reunite almost immediately, falling back into each other's arms as if prison walls had never stood between them. Within days, they vanish together, traveling east under assumed names. This is no longer just a jailbreak. It's a honeymoon on the run. For a few delirious weeks, Stephen and Philip bounce from state to state, laughing at tabloid headlines calling Russell King Khan and Houdini. They eventually settle in sunny Biloxi, Mississippi, planning a quiet new life far from Texas. On the morning of May 22, 1997, Stephen steps out of a cheap motel room to grab ice and walks straight into a swarm of U.S. Marshals. Within seconds, he's tackled, cuffed, and staring into the hard eyes of agents who've been hunting him for weeks. Texas officials are humiliated. A con man armed with felt-tipped dye just waltzed out the front door of their highest security prison. The judge slaps Stephen with another 45 years stacked on his existing sentence. His cumulative prison time now totals 144 years. They shackle him head to toe, transfer him to a tiny concrete cell reserved for Texas's most incorrigible felons, and throw him into 23-hour daily lockdown. Guards mutter to each other that they'll have to bury this one in concrete. Most men would shatter under that kind of crushing isolation. But as Stephen sits alone in his 12 by 7 foot concrete box, staring at cinder block walls, his mind is not focused on defeat. It's racing ahead to his next scheme. They think they've finally beaten me. They think nobody can escape a supermax solitary cell. What the authorities don't understand is that Stephen's most audacious escape is just beginning to take shape. And this time, he won't need forged scrubs, fake badges, or impersonated phone calls. He'll need something far more disturbing: his own dying body. This final con is Stephen J. Russell's masterpiece, equal parts genius and self-destruction. It begins with a deliberate transformation of his own flesh. Over months through 1998, Stephen methodically withers himself away. He barely eats, surviving on the smallest possible scraps of food and water. He smuggles laxatives into his cell and gulps them constantly, inducing chronic diarrhea designed to shed weight at a terrifying rate. Day after agonizing day, the once robust 6'2" man becomes gaunt, hollow-cheeked, skeletal. The transformation is so dramatic that prison doctors begin expressing genuine concern. Stephen plays his role to absolute perfection. He shuffles slowly, feigning profound weakness. He coughs pitifully into his sleeve during examinations. He has spent months studying the symptoms of late-stage AIDS in exhaustive detail, and he mimics them with precision. Convincing medical professionals you have AIDS when you don't is nearly impossible. But Stephen possesses one critical advantage. The prison's medical bureaucracy is a sprawling, understaffed maze practically begging to be exploited. Using a typewriter he's commandeered from the prison library, Stephen begins producing official-looking medical records documenting his fabricated illness. Lab results showing positive HIV tests. Doctors' notes describing rapid deterioration. T-cell counts dropping to critically low levels. Late at night, when supervision is minimal, he slips these forged documents into the prison's internal mail system, directing them to the medical unit for inclusion in his file. If any nurse or doctor actually examines him properly, if anyone runs real blood tests, the entire lie collapses. But nobody double-checks. The fake documentation winds its way through the bureaucratic system. A memo arrives on the warden's desk. Inmate Russell, HIV positive, T-cell count critically low, prognosis terminal. The Texas authorities, convinced by Stephen's deteriorating appearance and the mountain of official-looking reports in his file, decide there's no point keeping a dying man in maximum security. In March 1998, 10 months into a sickly charade, they grant Stephen Russell compassionate medical parole. He is transported under minimal guard to a nursing home in Huntsville, designated for terminal AIDS patients. Officials essentially wash their hands of him. He'll receive palliative care and die within weeks. After all, the man is practically a corpse already. Inside the hospice, staff treat Stephen with genuine kindness, seeing him as just another patient fading away. He lies in bed weak as a kitten. But inside, behind those sunken eyes, he has never felt more alive. This is precisely the scenario he engineered over 10 months of self-starvation. With minimal security around, because who worries about a dying man escaping, his plan enters its final phase. Using the nursing home's courtesy telephone beside his bed, Stephen places one final critical call. He becomes Dr. Williams, an earnest physician calling from the hospice. He contacts the Texas Prison Parole Board and regretfully informs them that patient Stephen Russell has taken a sharp downturn. It's the AIDS, you understand. A specialist in another state is running an experimental treatment that might extend Mr. Russell's life, but it requires travel. Would the board approve a medical transfer? Eager to avoid bad press, they sign off without hesitation. Days later, Dr. Williams calls back with tragic news. Inmate Russell succumbed to his illness before the transfer. Stephen J. Russell has died. The date is March 13th, 1998. Friday the 13th. On paper and in the official Texas database, Stephen Russell is legally deceased. They let a ghost out of prison. Stephen walks out the front door of the hospice carrying a death certificate with his own name printed on it. No guards, no shackles. Just a tired-looking man in a wheelchair being rolled outside for fresh air. Beyond the parking lot, he stands up, straightens his thin frame, and vanishes into the streets of Houston a free man. It's the most daring escape yet. Pure social engineering. Stephen has conned the entire Texas penal system into releasing him and sending condolences afterward. His jailers are left slack-jawed and outclassed. True to form, Stephen makes a beeline for the only person who matters. Philip Morris. The plan from the beginning was to reclaim their life together. Stephen has risen from the dead for love. But every agency in the country will be on alert once word of his resurrection leaks. Will Stephen finally escape for good, or will his obsession with Philip be his undoing? For a few precious days after his official death, Stephen is truly free. A ghost with a second chance. He could disappear forever, start over overseas with Philip. But true to form, he can't resist one last scheme. Fresh identities, quick money, maybe a plan to spring Philip from whatever legal binds remain. It proves fatal. Texas authorities, skeptical of the neatly tied-up ending, launch an investigation. No autopsy, no body, no proof of the con man's demise. The death certificate is exposed as a clever forgery. When the truth emerges, the humiliation is complete. This man tricked them into signing his release and faked his own death under their noses. The biggest manhunt yet begins. In early April 1998, barely 3 weeks after he walked out of the hospice, Stephen's luck runs dry. Acting on a tip, U.S. Marshals corner him at an office building in Florida, where he's faxing paperwork under yet another alias, This time, there's no escape. Russell is arrested for the fourth and final time. As the cuffs click shut, the chase that began with a phony judge's voice ends with a gaunt, exhausted man in federal custody. Texas throws everything at him. Stephen J. Russell is sentenced to 144 years in prison, 99 years for the escapes, 45 years for his financial crimes, a life sentence twice over. He became eligible for parole in 2020, but few believe he'll ever breathe free air again. Today, at 67, Stephen sits in solitary confinement in the Polunsky unit, the same facility housing Texas's death row. Prison officials consider him such a threat that he's isolated 23 hours a day and moved to a new cell every single week. No one hears his voice. His only company is concrete walls and bulletproof glass. They have silenced the great imposter, locking away the voice that brought Texas to its knees. In the end, a man who never physically harmed a soul is kept under conditions reserved for the most violent criminals. That is the price of embarrassment. Stephen Russell used nothing but charm, nerve, and a telephone to dismantle the security apparatus of an entire state, and the system will never forgive him for it. He once said anybody can get out of prison if they want to badly enough. After 4 escapes, the only way to stop him was to ensure he could never tell another lie to another living soul.